Welcome into the PHNX Cardinals podcast presented by the DraftKings Sportsbook app, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Do me a favor, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, leave a 5-star review. I'm Johnny Venerable, joined here on a Football Friday by Bo Brock and the great Frank Sanders, a.k.a. Speedo Jackson. Gentlemen, how we doing?
Speedo's doing good, brother.
Man, we're doing great. Speedo Jackson, is that like Southeast Jerome, Clinton Portis's alter ego? Is that Frank Sanders' alter ego as well?
It's one of them. It's one of them, my man. It's one I indoctrinated. There's a great story behind Speedo Jackson. I can share it, Johnny. You want me to give it to him right now?
Yeah, do it. Do it up.
All right. Well, Bo, you're new to the show, so what I would normally do is sometimes my alias is Speedo Jackson because I'm sitting at a bar and I don't want anyone to know I'm Frank Sanders. So I'm in my alias outfit. There are several spots that are around the valley on the east side or south side of Ahwatukee and some areas in Tempe that I go by Speedo Jackson when I'm at the bar because I don't want anybody buying shots for Frank Sanders. I don't want anybody going ham at the bar with Frank Sanders. So I want them to enjoy themselves so I can enjoy myself, you can enjoy yourself. And I am Speedo Jackson. So they say, how do you get Jackson? I say I go he, and then I say my dad was fast. That's how I get Speedo, last name Jackson, first name Speedo. And so that's my bar name. And if you anytime want to catch a drink with me, we will never be ourselves. You must have an alias to sit at the bar with me because it makes no sense to get in trouble under your name.
I love that story.
AKA Speedo Jackson.
Can never get enough of that story, Mr. Sanders.
It's going to be tough on the draft party at the Ainsworth if you're going to deny that you're the great Frank Sanders and is Speedo Jackson. You're going to go into a phone booth and come out as Speedo Jackson or Frank Sanders.
Not at Ainsworth. I'm at the office. I'm with the peeps. I'm in the regalia, DraftKings Sportsbook, and I'm rocking the hat. I'm PHNX 100%, and we always have our PHNX hats. Am I right or wrong?
Can't wait.
I mean, yeah, we hope so. Hopefully, nobody pulls an April Fool's on us. At our draft party at the Ainsworth, which is Thursday, April 28th. More information to come. Hopefully, we're not sitting around looking like fools waiting for our hats. And speaking of April Fools, today is April Fools, gentlemen. And we thought it would be very poetic, very on brand today to talk about some of the biggest fool acquisitions or the most foolish acquisitions made by this beloved franchise, this Cardinal franchise of the past years. 10 years, I should say, the past decade. And there's been quality moves made by this specific administration, Chandler Jones, DeAndre Hopkins. But Mr. Bo Brock, there have been a lot of head scratchers, to say the least. And you want to kick us off with one of the most foolish in recent memory.
I mean, I don't think you can get away from this. I think 2018, as far as the quarterback room, you probably got two people that had this franchise fooled. And there are receipts, like social media, Twitter is filled with receipts where people believed in this. And the signing of Sam Bradford, the biggest thief in NFL history, Frank, this guy made $130 million in his career. He made more money than Tony Romo in his football career. And I don't know what he really has to show for it. 3 magical games here in the desert playing for the Arizona Cardinals before Josh Rosen took over for the rest of the season. I think that was the biggest full job this organization has done because it was after the BA era. It was Carson Palmer who played the position at a high level for a couple seasons when he was healthy. And then you had Sam Bradford come in there and people were like, oh, this guy could be a bridge quarterback. He could do it. And he couldn't even stay on the field. He didn't want to stay on the field.
He wanted no part of that action. Just like this he's had nothing but repeated injuries from the time he left the college football rankings over at Oklahoma. They thought he was good. He got hurt at Oklahoma multitudes of times. Then someone said, let's draft him and pay him a lot of money up front, which unfortunately changed Cam Newton's coming out party. He thought he was going to be dressed up with a lot of money, but they changed the rookie contract at that time because of what happened with Sam Bradford. And so therefore, the Cardinals getting him and bringing him into this organization was not a good pick or a good decision. And I don't know who thought this guy had anything left in the tank besides an opportunity to cash in, like you said.
I think it was Steve Keim trying to double down on broken quarterbacks. He got Carson Palmer once upon a time for, a 6th-round pick, and he's like, I can do the same thing with Sam Bradford. The problem is Bradford was never the player Palmer was, even though they were both first overall picks, and he didn't have Bruce Arians. Steve Wilkes and Sam Bradford, God bless them, just a disaster waiting to happen. And then you couple that with Mike McCoy and another quarterback that we're going to talk about momentarily. But I remember that offseason, $20 million was a lot of money in 2018 for a quarterback. Now you're probably thinking to yourself, well, Jimmy G makes 27, right? Some of these quarterbacks are making in the 30s and then the 40s, the elite players. But, I mean, that cap hit, even for 1 year, was huge. And I think that was the Cardinals' way of, like, courting Sam Bradford, saying, hey, Sam, come be our quarterback. We know you have options. And for Minnesota, I think, like, the year before or 2 years before, he had, like, 20 TDs to 5 picks. But his inability to move in the pocket and the offensive line, or what was left of it, it was just a disaster. And I remember that opening game, Bo, against maybe Washington, where he played Alex Smith head-to-head, and the Cardinals were just completely uncompetitive, lackadaisical, and it starts with the quarterback position. Say what you want. People have issues with Kyler Murray and his leadership. Kyler Murray gets his teammates enthused because of how electrifying he is with the football in his hands, and you feel like you've got a chance to score on every offensive possession. When Cardinal players saw Sam Bradford trot out onto the field, series after series, possession after possession, and they couldn't even get a first down, it just kind of encapsulated that entire season in 2018.
They were on the field for 5 minutes that first half, and the game was over. Going into the locker room, Sam Bradford, he looked like, even though he's getting paid handsomely, he was like, I don't want to be here. I'm scared. I don't want to take another hit. I don't want to have to do another rehab. I don't want to feel that pain. And it lasted another game and a half. And then they put Josh Rosen in that game in week 3 against that Bears defense with Khalil Mack. And Sam Bradford became a turnover machine, couldn't hold on to the football. Sammy fumbles all of a sudden. And Josh Rosen's put in with 3 minutes left in the game? And a game the Arizona Cardinals could win. And I just remember that was just like everything fell apart. Steve Wilkes pulls David Johnson at one point because he missed an assignment, and they had a young Chase Edmonds making a play in that game. It was just a disaster. And I think you can't even get away from the 2018 quarterback room and not feel fooled by trading up for the 10th overall pick and taking Josh Rosen out of UCLA.
Yep. That's where I was going with my selection. And I could tell you how I felt about it at the time, but I think I'd rather show you.
The Oakland Raiders have traded the 10th pick to the Arizona Cardinals. With the 10th pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Arizona Cardinals select Josh Rosen.
Hey, the lips
Yes! Championships!
Hey, the lips on the bottom are quicker than the one on top.
Championships!
Championships.
Hold up. Back. Hold up. You can just, the Honest Aid, the draft board.
It's basically that was my dunce cap in retrospect. That was my fool hat in retrospect. So I was hosting a draft party at my house, and lot to unpack from that video. Rosen was my number 2 quarterback in that draft behind Sam Darnold. Coincidentally, disastrous results, but I love Rosen. I thought he was going to be the second coming of Troy Aikman, and he was not. But that night, I stayed up till maybe 4 a.m. watching UCLA highlights from his last year. My father is in that video, and he is dejected because he wanted Lamar Jackson, and he thought we were going to trade up for Lamar Jackson. He does not let me hear the end of it to this day. So, Dad, if you're listening, I apologize once again. But I was thrilled. I thought we finally hit the jackpot. Poor Josh, man. I won't say we set him up for failure long-term, because if he was really something special, like he would have gone on and caught on with San Francisco or Tampa or somebody like that with really strong coaching staffs offensively. It's the biggest bust in modern draft history outside of like a Jamarcus Russell. And the fact that, the Cardinals thankfully didn't give up the farm. They didn't give up multiple firsts, but they did give up a 3rd and a 5th. I was convinced. I was 100% convinced, no matter who the coaching staff was. And I was excited when Cliff got hired. I thought that was a perfect pairing for him. I was wrong on Josh Rosen. That I was made a fool.
I thought Abraham Lincoln couldn't tell a lie, and here we are. Here we are.
What can you even say? What can you even say?
What a bad moment, man.
You know,
what a real bad moment.
Mike Jurecki, who covers the team, he's reported on the team for over 20 years. He said the Cardinals were never in on Lamar. Like they didn't like him as a quarterback at all.
I believe that.
So I mean, and it's, if you look back at that draft, and I mean, Baker Mayfield's on his way out, number 1 overall pick, and that Darnold, as you mentioned, he was highly touted. But the 2 studs in that draft were, I mean, you could flip it. I mean, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson were the real deal, and everybody else was just a couple guys.
It was a sad moment to me because I thought Lamar Jackson would have brought something different to the program, to what this team needed. He had legs on. He had legs that would have definitely helped out an offensive line that was pretty beat up and not really good at all. And again, what we do, we drop Josh Rosen. He sits in the pocket. He gets beat up. And the following year behind that, we get a kid that's got legs and can move the pocket a little bit. So I guess at the end of the day, thank you for drafting Josh Rosen, because he got a chance to be in the NFL and it just never panned out. But in reality, we ended up getting Kyler Murray because we sucked so bad that year that we had no choice but to have the first overall pick in the next draft coming up. So thank you for drafting Josh Rosen. That's real foresight. That's real foresight when you can grab the crystal ball and turn it around and look on the backside of it and see a year ahead of itself and say, if we tank this year without number 1 overall, we'll be hella good the following 3 years after that, and maybe for the next 5 or 6 years.
I'd love to give the Cardinals the benefit of the doubt there with that kind of foresight. Now, they have some slick frames that you've got on right now, kind of having that vision, that 2020 vision. More mistakes, more foolish moves by the Arizona Cardinals. I think you can't get away, guys, from Andy Isabella. I mean, who turned out to be who Josh Rosen, that pick, was traded to Miami for. And, I mean, this was Cliff Kingsbury's guy. I was just watching video before we cracked the mics today of Cliff Kingsbury just basically throwing a party in the war room saying, this guy's going to make an impact right now. He's my dude. He got on the phone. He was overcome with excitement talking to Izzy, and it hasn't panned out.
Which is why I don't think you could hold it against Steve Keim. Steve could put his foot down, but if you want your GM to empower his head coach, and think about where Steve was at this point in time, like he was having to eat crow on Josh Rosen, so he just taken Kyler Murray. Now he's got Kyler Murray's biggest advocate in Cliff Kingsbury, and so Cliff now wants to double down. He's like, give me my little air raid receiver that I desperately need. Okay, and it's not like that pick at the time. I didn't like the pick. A lot of people didn't like it. But, I mean, for the most part, he went in the draft where he was supposed to go. Isabella dominated the Senior Bowl, had a really strong combine, and was a late second, early third round prospect. And so I warmed up to the pick after the fact. I thought DK Metcalf was a lot of these other combine guys who lack of production in the SEC. You blow up the combine, he's more of an athlete than a football player. Clearly, that was not the case. But you could have sold that to me as a bill of goods. And AJ Brown and these Deebo Samuel, they went many, many picks before Isabella. But now looking back at it, Bo, you hit the nail on the head. Like, Isabella is synonymous with Rosen because that was the pick that was dealt. So until Isabella, I believe, is moved off of this franchise, that memory will always haunt Cardinal fans. And of course, having DK Metcalf in your division to terrorize you for these past 3 seasons does not help either. But Frank, from a receiver standpoint, I mean, why do you feel like Isabella just hasn't been successful at the NFL level?
I think when he got here, one of the things that did not help him was he got hurt, and then he had COVID behind that, and the COVID situation, he got away from it, and came back, but it took him a little time before he became that. Unfortunately, it just has not panned out. And then we go back the following year, and we get another kid that's got more speed, more elusiveness, more power, and I think that. I'm not going to be another side note is that I think that the offense just does not fit that type of person. Our offense is to stretch the ball down the field. It is not a underneath throwing the ball. It's the quarterback throwing the ball over the top. Air raid means air raid, not just these little dinking dunk pop. These spot and pop these guys on these little short routes. That was not the case. And so I don't know why Cliff was so excited about him when it does not fit his system. And he has not shown that in none of the receivers that he has right now. We've had Christian Kirk, who's agile and very quick, and you can get the ball to him in his hands pretty fast, and he can make things move. did the same thing with Rondale Moore, and we have not done that yet. So to have to be so excited about Andy Isabella, I saw his highlight tapes, and if we can do both, go back and watch Andy Isabella and watch Rondale Moore and be just as excited about these guys and what their potential future will be. But unfortunately, our offensive system does not fit those guys per se.
Any other honorable mentions as we wrap up foolish moves for the Cardinals? I mean,
can I say Kimdichie? Robert Kimdichie, defensive tackle out of the SEC, Mississippi State. Am I wrong? Ole Miss, just a total 100% bust. Like, did he ever play a down in the regular season?
He did sparingly.
Just what the heck happened?
Talk about wasting God-given talent and just being a freak of nature. And I'll never forget when Ole Miss upset Bama that year. I think Bama won the national championship, whenever that was, 2016, and he dominated them. He dominated Nick Saban for 4 quarters, and I didn't dislike the pick because I thought, okay, if this guy figures it out at the next level, head on his shoulders, like, talent's not an issue, and I'm always going to roll the dice on talent. But I mean, his parents, I mean, it's come out like he was spoiled as a child. Didn't he have like a pet, tiger or something? Like he never really had to work hard with football.
He fell out of a hotel room because he was high on, was it spice? What was it?
He some mask thing on. Am I wrong? Some mask thing he had on.
That was his teammate Laramie Tunsil right before the draft.
Yes,
he had the gas mask bonk.
Do you think that because of the fact Kimdichie was such a bust for them, they just staunchly opposed from drafting Ole Miss players that 2 years later with AJ Brown and DK Metcalf? I wonder if there's some truth to that. Like, we got burned so badly by this program, and you really shouldn't operate that way. But I could see that, and it's part of the reason I think that maybe they're going to go away from small school guys like Isabella because they've gotten burned by small school guys recently. I think that you could put some merit on the fact that they didn't want DK Metcalf because they took a player from Ole Miss just 2 years prior, and it was such a disaster. It was such a disaster.
That's something to look at in hindsight. That is definitely something to look at.
What about Chad Williams in 2017? I wrote down today. I don't think he ever played a down for this team. Now, it's a 3rd round pick, but
it was a 3rd round pick that never went to the combine.
They were high on him based upon his speed and what they thought they saw behind closed doors. That's not necessarily on. You say Kimes, but this is what happens in the war room. There's tons of scouts, and I always say, God bless the guy that is arguing for a Bo Brock or a Johnny Venable that's in the meeting room or the talking heads, and they're sitting there looking at a vision board or a draft board that has 600-something names or 300-something names of players they can potentially draft. They have those that we need and the wants and those that are top picks. But God bless you if you're the guy that someone's arguing, saying, "Hey, this guy Chad Williams he's 6'3", he's got speed. He's just coming from a small school. He's not in a situation where they're throwing the ball a lot, but I see a lot of upside in this guy." That's the guy we want to talk to that was pitching him to Steve and really arguing, because sometimes you can't be a soft voice in a draft board room. You have to believe in what you believe in, and you have to really extrapolate the point of emphasis on why you think this guy's going to be good to that team. They brought him in here, but unfortunately, he was a bust. So I'm with you, Johnny, on that. If they go away from guys from small schools and they've been burnt enough that they shouldn't believe in it, then I mean, I can argue. I can see that being a point that needs to be made too as well.
And there was a guy the next round that they took at guard, Dorian Johnson out of Pittsburgh, that literally never made. He didn't even make the team.
He had health issues, right? Like I had a blood clot or something going on where, and again, like you get to day 3, and I'll give you some. You miss on Hakeem Butler. Like Hakeem Butler was going in the 4th round. You have the top pick for a reason. Like his upside was great. I don't care if you miss on a guy on day 3. Those are lottery tickets upon lottery tickets. But when they were drafting just complete no names in the 2nd and 3rd round, who's the corner that they took? Brandon Williams, who was a running back that they tried to convert. It was that same draft. The only thing that saved the 2016 draft was they had enough sense. They traded the 2nd round pick for Chandler Jones, but they coupled the Kimdichie pick in 2016 with Brandon Williams, a running back converted to corner. And I think that was Keim just getting way too cute. He's like, I hit on David Johnson. I hit on John Brown. Like, look at these other small school guys. That's thinking you're smarter than the room. And I think it carried over for a couple more years. That's why I've just been a staunch advocate for this team drafting elite players from Power 5 schools, from teams that get into the Final Four, that are in the top 10. Like, Hassan Reddick notwithstanding, because they played him out of position. Like, anytime this squad goes small school recently, it has not worked out well.
I agree with that. Logan Thomas. How about Logan Thomas? Bryant Johnson. Somebody said Matt Liner. Beanie Wells. Michael Floyd. How about those names?
Can we talk about the Bryant Johnson situation in 2003? So you have a player in Terrell Suggs that is a local product that wants to play for you when your franchise really has never been lower. Before the new stadium was built, he is advocating. You have 2 first-round picks. He's like, please, Cardinals, I want to be a Cardinal. I want to play here. They not only don't take him, they take another pass rusher in Calvin Pace, who doesn't do anything for you, and then you let him go, and he goes and has a productive year with the Jets. That I think was one of the lowest points, that 2003 draft, where you have 2 firsts, Brian Johnson and Calvin Pace, and then you basically bottom out the next year and you're gifted Fitzgerald. But Terrell Suggs, man, always wanted to be a Cardinal. Then they brought him back for the retirement tour and didn't go well either.
Hey, Bo, you see that crystal ball again, how he stunk in 2003? Then flipped it and got Larry Fitz. Come on, man.
There you go. Becoming
Keim is a magician. I will stink a year. I go get some guys. I bring them in. They're going to suck. We're going to flip the ball. And then in the back end, we're going to get somebody that you're really going to love. Larry Fitz, Kyler Murray, Cliff Kingsbury. Got to be happy about that.
You agree with this, Bo? Pick and Spread says, I will say this, ever since the 2019 draft, we've been a lot better at drafting than before. Byron Murphy, Kyler Murray, Zach Allen, Jalen Thompson's been fantastic. Isaiah, Lecky Fotu, Rondell Moore, 4th rounder Marco Wilson. I would agree with this, but I mean, you're basically you're building from the ground up. And a lot of those picks were early picks.
Put that back up. Kyler, Oklahoma. Byron, Washington, Zach Allen, BC, Jalen Thompson, Washington State, Simmons, Clemson, Rondell, Purdue, Fotu was even Utah, and Marco from Florida. Those are all big school guys. They're all Power 5 guys. There you go.
Tremendous point. You know who's not on that list? Andy Isabella, UMass. And you know what? I will say this for Steve. If this is what he's trying to achieve, by the way, our first round pick from Tulsa isn't on this list from last year, but we digress there. If this is the new formula for success for Keim and company, is to build through the draft with Power 5 elite level players, like, I'm okay with that, because the sustainability factor is huge. Like, they don't have to worry about safety for the next 5 years because they've decided to just draft two premier safety products in Jalen Thompson and Budda Baker. Where they have concerns are receiver, where they took an Isabella, right, once upon a time, where they played Christian Kirk out of position. So you look at like the positions where they've missed on, and it's pretty easy to see why. Like, DJ Humphries came around once upon a time because he was a top prospect out of Florida, right? And you look at, of course, Kyler Murray, dominating teams left and right at the collegiate level into the Final Four, had, Alabama on the ropes in the second half of that Final Four game. If we try to make sense of it, it makes sense for you. Marco Wilson was a top prospect that probably would have been a day 2 pick. Wouldn't you say so? Had he not thrown his shoe? And then that's the kind of flyer you take on day 3 of the draft. It's like, I want the athlete. I don't want an overachiever unless you combine it with the fact that he dominated a Power 5 school.
That makes sense. I mean, the Kendiche thing is, I think he had too many red flags and he slipped for a reason, and teams were scared to take him in the first round. And Keim, that's where, it's the difference. But the difference too was, you said that's a day 3 pick. That's where you you take those Hail Marys. That's where you can take a guy like Honey Badger, where you talk about the complete polar opposite of a foolish deal. They took the chance on Tyrann Mathieu, and it worked out well for this franchise and him too. He's still playing in the league at the high level. Sure, he's not signed anywhere, but he was a definite hit for Steve Keim and crew.
I got a question on Twitter that it's not in the chat, but I wanted to bring it up to both you guys. Caleus Campbell, letting him walk several years back, then of course going to Jacksonville in the running for Defensive Player of the Year. Now they ran a different system, and Frank, you pointed this out before. Is Caleus was probably underutilized as a 5 technique, and then eventually got to play the 4-3 end a little bit and defensive tackle. Is kind of where he flourished late in his career.
I agree with you. I think that Caleus would be a good fit in a lot of systems if you wanted somebody to come in and just, bull rush the passer and at least take up some space. The Cardinals did a good job with him. I think that at the time they let him go, his money on the table was just too much for him. And again, I think it came to like $1 million difference on him deciding to be here or go to Jacksonville. It wasn't a whole bunch of money that was on the table, but I don't think the Cardinals missed him by that much, but it was just enough if that was the thing that, he felt like he needed to do and made a decision. You're thinking about bringing him back? Because I know you said he's on the market. You want him back, don't you, John?
30, he's 36.
You want him, John.
I don't.
But you want him,
I mean, I'm indifferent about that. That doesn't move the needle for me.
I mean, it would be I think it'd be a savvy late offseason move by Steve Keim if it's still available to him. I mean, watching Baltimore just whiff on players, they might probably just try to bring Caleus back. But he was good against the run. He was good about getting the passer. I think what role he would need to play for the Arizona Cardinals, he would be a good fit.
Lots of misses, right? I hope all of you right now, as you prepare for the Final Four this weekend, tomorrow, do not miss on your picks via the DraftKings Sportsbook app. I want to remind all college basketball fans, join the action during the biggest tournament of the year. It's crazy. We conclude Final Four this weekend. Next week's the last week of the NBA regular season. The Suns, there's not a better time to be on the DraftKings Sportsbook app and turn your attention to the team's biggest victory of the year. If they win, you win, utilizing that promo code PHNX. Bet just $5 on any team to win and get $200 in free bets. It's that simple. DraftKings Sportsbook customers can also bet on college hoops with same-game parlays. Combine multiple bets from the same game for an even bigger payout. The more legs you add, the more money you can win. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable. And best of all, you can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. It's a call to action. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use that promo code PHNX, bet $5, and win $200 in free bets if they win. 21 and over, Arizona only. Gambling problem, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. New customer only. Minimum $5 deposit. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. My DraftKings pick of the week, gentlemen. I do like the Duke Blue Devils to cover -4 because I do believe the tournament is rigged in his favor, that being Coach K in his final tournament run. I've lost too much money betting against them at this point. I'd like to come out on the profitable end. I also want to remind everybody right now on the PHNX merchandise locker, check out these bad boys. The PHNX hats are here live and in living color. They are fantastic. They are $29.99, well worth it. The gentlemen here on this podcast are still waiting for our hats. I believe, Frank, you don't have a hat yet, do you?
No, I do not have a hat yet. I have a DNVR hat. That's the white and black. I was in Denver one week with Saul and got me a DNVR hat. It looked like the white with the black tip. I'm looking for ours in the PHNX crew.
They're fresh, man. If we can get these before we head out to the Ainsworth at the end of April 4, the draft party on April 28th. They will be the envy of everyone there. You can get those at PHNX merchandise locker. You can also become a member at gophnx.com for just under $60 for the year. Support a free t-shirt from our locker if you do so. If you want to dip your toe in, 50 cents for the first month, $8.99 for the subsequent months. All good things. Mr. Bo Brock, perfect transition here as Kiro is asking thoughts on the players Vance Joseph was scouting today.
Yeah, they were the Cardinals were double duty today at a couple pro days, and we talk about the Power 5 conference, at least one of those. I know Houston, they're making the jump to the Big 12, aren't they? But
I count them as basically a Power 5 school.
All right, that's fair. But they were out there. Vance Joseph was in attendance of the Cougars, and then you had 3 personnel from the Cardinals at Kentucky at their pro day who have a trio of prospects that are very intriguing for the Arizona Cardinals. But I want to really get into our guy, Frank Sanders, his expertise, because Wan'Dale Robinson at Kentucky. That's not where Vance Joseph was, but they had those 3 guys out there watching Kentucky work out for their pro day. They got a big defensive end and Josh Paschal. You've got Darian Kennard, who's a guard, who's probably just on the fringe. He's a top 100 prospect, but Wan'Dale Robinson, just a slot king, Frank. How would he fit with a guy like Rondale Moore? Do you mess with that? Do you look at that? Do you just try to find playmakers, or do you stay away from that and try to empower the guys in your building? Come on, Speedo.
Oh, we've done this 3 years in a row. We've gotten 3 years in a row. We've gone after Christian Kirk, who's 5 foot 10, 11. We've got Andy Isabella, who's 5 foot, and we've gone out and we got Rondale Moore sitting in the building, who we have not yet even discovered. Now we're talking about a Rondale, Mr. Robinson out of Kentucky that will add to our flavor. Our offensive system, unless there's something that Cliff is doing behind scenes that I'm not 100% sure of, I'm 100% concerned that they're putting themselves out there looking at this guy. I mean, we need tall, we need big, we need agile receivers that can get up and down the field, that can catch a lot of Hail Murray footballs, because that's what he does consistently. I'm only concerned about that because we haven't even scratched the surface, Rondale. So when I see when I'm starting to have those questions, Bo, this is the only thing that happens to me. I start to wonder then. We already know where Andy Isabella is, where he's at when it comes to his performance on the football field. Are we already questioning the second-round draft pick that is supposed to be explosive in all mannerisms of Steve Smith, and then yet we haven't even really seen him? So we're going to go get somebody to bring another small guy in, and we're trying to figure that out. And that to me is it's blowing my mind. It's baffling. Rondale can do punt returns and kick returns. He has the speed and the agility to do all those things, and so I'm concerned in that manner. I'm concerned. So that must mean that Rondale, the pass that we would have given him, we're setting all of our last year's second-round receivers up for question marks. That's why we drafted Andy Isabella. We questioned Christian Kirk. That's why we drafted Rondale Moore, because we questioned Andy Isabella. And now we're in a position where I feel like we're going to put a big fat question mark on Rondale Moore if this guy becomes a top prospect for us right now in the game.
Yeah, I'm with Frank. I like Wan'Dale Robinson. It even sounds like Rondale, but just not for the Cardinals. And he dominated the hardest conference in college football. That's already a notch in his competitive advantage over Rondale Moore, who played in the Big Ten and then missed most of his last season at Purdue. So this guy, I mean, he's a ready-made slot receiver at the NFL level. I think for the most part, the general consensus is he's going to be a third-round pick. Now, we've seen receivers get overdrafted before, but he's an underneath guy. I feel like right now you have to just see what you have with what's in-house underneath. And if you're taking a wide out, he better be able to play the wide to DeAndre Hopkins X. It doesn't mean you force it with a guy who's a lesser prospect than, say, Robinson. But, like, Treylon Burks, for instance, like, he's an outside receiver, I feel like, for the most part. I know people think he can play. He's an outside guy to me. Drake London's an outside guy. I think both of the players from Ohio State, specifically Chris Olave, is an outside guy. I don't even think Garrett Wilson's going to sniff the Cardinals at 23. I need somebody with some size. So if you want to take the kid from Georgia based on projections at the next level because the production's not there, I'm okay with that too. I mean, that's DK Metcalf all over again. So at the end of the day, like, this team cannot get caught up in, because if you're taking Robinson in the second or third round and you say this guy's going to be a playmaker for us from day one, like, where does the ball go then? What's Rondale? What's his snaps look like? I've seen this too many times. Like, there is a spot to be had outside opposite Hopkins today that is not filled. It's not filled by AJ Green or Julio Jones or Odell Beckham. It's vacant for a reason. Inside, underneath, I mean, you could say Isabella. Let's just contextualize it. They have 3 starting receivers. One of them is an all-pro as an X-receiver. One of them is their Z with Rondale Moore. Who is the Y? We have to find the Y, right? And drafting somebody like Robinson doesn't help that. It only confuses the rest of us.
I feel like I'm listening to Tony Robbins. You have to find your why. The Arizona Cardinals have to find their why as well. And it's not Wan'Dale, unfortunately.
This is not an indictment of the kid, too. I love him. This is a Cardinal thing. This is a Cardinal thing. He's
5'8". He's 5'8". You're going to have 2 of your foundational receivers that you're going to move forward with your 5'10" quarterback. I mean, you guys, you're going to lose it. I know it's football. You're not playing pickup basketball, but you can't build a football power with a bunch of guys and they're 6 feet tall. Let's talk about some bigger guys. We talked about Caleus Campbell, right? And get back to VJ being in Houston and their pro day, because there's a couple intriguing prospects for the Cougars as well, including a top 50 D-line prospect, Logan Hall. He's versatile. He's 6'6", 283. He's got some beef. He looks a little bit like, when I watch him on tape, he looks, I don't want to say JJ Watt, because that's very nice to a guy who's not even a first round pick. I think Zach Allen, maybe when I watch him, I think he can he's pretty shifty. He can play inside. He can play outside. If you're looking at pick number 55, I think it's a good fit for the Cardinals.
I agree with you. We need body. We need somebody big and somebody that can they can stretch their wingspan out there, man, and reach and grab some tackles when they're trying to pull, or guards when they're trying to pull, and let our linebackers run through those seams. That would be nice to have. Anybody that could have some stature with some wiggle, I'd take them in a heartbeat. Especially if you say they come from a school that's got a little dog in them. You say you watch him. What was one of some of the biggest things about JJ that made him great? He had a great motor. He had a great engine man on himself. He was able to play different positions. He was solid at the punch, and then he could get off and move guys around. If Logan can do the same thing, and he looks like he could do that, we need bodies in the middle, whether they be young or veterans. But if he got a little bit of nastiness in him like JJ with a little leadership, I'd take that.
The Cardinals just need young athletic bodies up front on the defensive line, and the rotational aspect, I think, will help somebody like JJ over the course of 17 games in a season. JJ Watt, he's a phenomenal player and a person, and he's going in the Hall of Fame, but entering year 33, 34 next year cannot be expected to play 90+% of the snaps. He will not last. Zach Allen, the opposite end, now he's going into the fourth year. It's a contract year. I think we expect him to do big things. I got big question marks on the two defensive tackles that they took in the fourth round once upon a time, Rashad Lawrence and Lecky Fotu. Actually, Michael Dogby might be the best of the rotational developmental defensive tackles. All this to say, that's a glaring need. And the problem with that is you're going to have to probably spend a pick on a second or third round defensive lineman from a developmental standpoint, because I just don't think the value is going to be there in the first round outside of maybe the kid or two from Georgia's defensive line. To me, I would almost try to double dip if you could. If you're able to trade down, accumulate more picks, and take two defensive linemen, a 3 technique, a traditional nose, and a 5 technique. That's what the Cardinals need to do. Because again, it's the opposite approach with what we saw with Xavier Collins and Jordan Hicks last year, and to a lesser extent Isaiah Simmons the year before. Like in Vance Joseph's defense, like Jordan Hicks doesn't leave the field, right? He plays 90+% of the snaps. At least the defensive lineman, he will rotate guys, especially if they can show they can play. And you just need bodies on the defensive line. So I'm all for that. I know I've been adamant, like, stop giving Vance Joseph high picks and then not letting them play. I think the caveat to that is defensive line, defensive tackles, because number one, guys like Watt need breaks, and number two, you just need rotational guys. I think that's a safe space to play in if you're Vance.
There's a well-respected football mind that is, as the Arizona Cardinals roster stands right now, ranking them very high as far as the NFC goes. I'll tell you who that is. But we have a new partner to tell you about in the house. We're excited to welcome OG's Brands into the PHNX family. Johnny Frank OG's is one of Arizona's first original scratch-made cannabis kitchens and is dedicated to creating innovative and memorable cannabis-infused products that flavor life's journey. Quality of their products stem from the combination of accurate dosing and amazing flavors. Edibles are not one-size-fits-all product. Believe me, do I know that, which is why OG's is proud to offer a wide range of products for all demographics and all preferences. Welcome to the PHNX Sports Cardinals family. OG's.
OG's, and Frank's the OG, so perfect.
We're not talking about the ice, the icings, the ice. We're talking about OG's. You said cannabis?
Yes, I did.
Yes, sir.
Bless you.
Gambling,
Bless
cannabis,
you, bless you.
Sweet gear, and we're going to talk vaccines later. All the bases covered here on this show, on this podcast.
Woo! April Fools.
No.
Did y'all try to get me? Is that a joke?
No.
Nope.
It's a new sponsor.
There are supposedly free samples of some kind, either merchandise or otherwise, at the office. And Saul said, first come, first serve. So head on over to Phoenix and get yourself some, and you guys get yourself some.
I'm put some
Absolutely.
OGs and beat Slow Jackson in a minute here. Slow Drag Jackson in a minute.
And also, let me tell you, children 5 and older eligible for the COVID-19 vaccine. The vaccine is the best tool we have to reduce the chances of getting sick. The vaccine can reduce the risk of being hospitalized or dying from the disease. Safe, free, and highly effective vaccines are available throughout Arizona. Visit azhealth.gov/find vaccine for a location near you. So Rich Eisen on his radio show, nationally syndicated radio show today, was breaking down the NFC. I think he had Jason Light, former Arizona Cardinals front office exec, on the phone, and he was, obviously the Tampa Bay Buccaneers GM now, and they've been obviously hot topic this week with BA stepping down and moving to the front office, and Todd Bowles getting that head coach job, very well deserved. But Eisen kind of had an impromptu NFC power rankings, and the Arizona Cardinals, I think a lot of people will be excited to see that they checked in at 5th. And if 7 teams make the postseason, that's good news for the Arizona Cardinals. Bucks at 1, as you can see here on the graphic. Follow us on YouTube, PHNX Sports. Bucks 1, Rams 2, Packers 3, Niners 4, Cardinals 5. Now, you can breathe a sigh of relief that there's only 2 NFC West teams ahead of them, not 3, because the Seahawks, they're just going to be a punching bag this season. But as it stands, this is pre-draft. So people, as down as people are about this offseason, Cardinals still in the thick of things as far as the NFC goes.
Yeah, and in any other division, they're the co-favorites to win the division, or a firm contender. But in the NFC West, only the NFC West. Well, a caveat in the NFC, the AFC West, different animal. They could come in 3rd in their own division, but still be 5th in the NFC. And we saw 3 NFC West teams make the playoffs last year, and Cardinals were in first place throughout the course of the season, at 10-2, and had multiple ample chances to win the division. They did not, as we all know and suffered through together. And then you had the lesser 2 teams for most of the year in San Francisco and the LA Rams playing the NFC title game. So I think that's fair. And I also think it speaks to kind of Keim and Michael Bidwell's strategy here in the offseason. Like, let's wait out a lot of these teams. The NFC South is a hot mess, disaster, dumpster fire outside of Tampa Bay. There are multiple teams that do not have quarterbacks. The Saints lost their head coach. I don't expect any of those teams to be relevant. The NFC East now, I think, will be a little bit more improved. I'm a big Philadelphia guy. I think that, their picks, assuming they hit on them, could make them quick contenders in that division. I think Dallas is due for a step back. And then you look at the North. Like, what are the Packers now without Devontae Adams? Second year with Dan Campbell. Minnesota's got a new coach. What the hell, is happening in Chicago? They've got their roster. Like, the Cardinals are a playoff team today. And I think we lose sight of that because we're nitpicking the lack of moves in free agency, but that gives us good clarity, I think.
April Fools.
No, it's not April Fools.
See it, April Fools. You crazy. You told me we're a playoff team today. You see that roster we got in there? You see that?
Look at the rest of the NFC. You're in by association.
Well, I guess you have to accept that then. We're in by association. I'm surprised at that, though. I really am. I'm surprised that the Cowboys aren't a top pick who has, stud receivers right now, ready to go. A running back or 2 running backs potentially that's on the table, and a quarterback that's a leader, along with a hell of a really good front. They got 4 or 5 guys on that defensive front that makes a lot of noise. So, or just the whole defense as a whole, that we jump them that fast. I'm just gonna have to just be quiet on that, Bo, because I felt like I just got April Fooled right there, big time. For us to be, man.
No, embrace the debate, my friend. If you think that the Cardinals, the good thing here is, as it stands on April Fool's Day, April 1st, the Arizona Cardinals are 5th in the NFC, and they really haven't made a significant addition to this roster. They've taken a couple L's as Chandler Jones exits to the Raiders and Christian Kirk goes to the Jaguars. But, they maintain a quarter of their points scored with Ertz and with James Conner, the points that they put back on the roster, all those 18 touchdowns from Conner, and then you had 3 from Ertz. And then you get DeAndre Hopkins back. I think what this team is trying to do is they're trying to get back to where they were at the 10-2 mark. Obviously, I don't think they're ignorant or oblivious to how things ended. But when you look at the teams ahead of them on the rankings, the Cardinals are the only team that really hasn't done anything. And I think that they will make a move eventually, and they could move up these rankings potentially.
For those of you who want to bitch and complain about Kyler Murray's offseason and the contract he's supposedly demanding. This is a ranking outside of the Niners because their culture has been ingratiated as they're competitive because their top-end talent, their coaching has been fantastic, right? As much as I hate to have a love affair with Kyle Shanahan, like they're an outlier at number 4. This is just a new ranking of the NFC quarterbacks, and that's who's getting in the playoffs. You remove Kyler Murray from the Cardinals, they are not a playoff team, easily not a playoff team. So you look at, okay, Brady, Rodgers, Stafford, right, are the hierarchy in some order in the NFC. And then it's like, who's the 4th best quarterback right now? It's Kyler Murray, right? So, of course, the Cardinals have to be included. Now, you can push back, and Kirk Cousins, and I'm sure Minnesota is like a fringe playoff team to a lot of people, and we'll see second year from Justin Fields, but, like, that's about it. So I think it just speaks to the fact that, like, Vegas is just going to look. The NFC is depleted. Most of the good players have gone to the AFC. Cardinals still have a top 10 quarterback in Kyler Murray. They're a playoff team. You take Kyler Murray off of this team, they are a top 10 team drafting. Not a top 10 team, but a top 10 team drafting. So if I'm Keim and company, like, yeah, I'm sitting back on my hands. I'm letting free agency come to me. I'm gearing up toward the draft. But, like, make no mistake. And I love Hopkins and Budda Baker and James Conner and Zach Ertz and all these guys. They don't matter one iota if the Cardinals do not have number 1 under center or in shotgun, I should say.
Good call.
Frank, are they a playoff team as you see them right now? This is a safe place. This is a net. We can all talk honestly here.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Who would make it in the NFC over them if they didn't make it? There's 7 spots now.
Your points are valid, but we're one disaster away from probably not even drafting probably in the top 10 next year. We're one no Kyler Murray, like you said, and
that's
probably
true.
If D Hop's not there, I don't know exactly what's going to happen because we.
But isn't that the biggest supporting document or supporting statement you can have to pay Kyler Murray?
I would agree.
It's like if you lose Kyler Murray, you're screwed. Whereas the Niners, they lose Jimmy G. It's like, okay, we got Trey Lance, or we can hold down the fort for a little while. You lose Kyler Murray. I'd be anxious to see if we get a shark from Vegas to come on and basically give us a projected win total for the Cardinals, because we've talked about it earlier this week. It's sitting at 9.5. Like, you lose Kyler, what is that number? 4, 5?
But if you get a playmaker opposite DeAndre Hopkins in the draft, you add some glue guys in the middle, you fill in those gaps. I think what they're fully capable of doing. You can call me naive for believing in Steve Keim for that, but I think that when you look at this roster, you've got Kyler at the quarterback position, and if he can do what everybody believes he can do, the sky's the limit for this team. And you've got DeAndre Hopkins at wide receiver, you've got James Conner at running back, you've got the offensive line, Rodney Hudson, you've got on the defensive side, you've got players. It feels like in every facet of this roster, you just need to maybe create some depth, and that's where they lacked last season. If they can create depth between now and September, they're going to be in good shape.
I like it. I'm convinced. I got sold. I mean, I was definitely. When I looked at this roster, I had one eye closed. I was like, man, I'm squinting to find talent, and I didn't see it. Now you guys just sold me. If I kept Kyler and I got D Hop's back healthy, I can see clearly now. The rank is gone. Better now.
Would you gentlemen say that ranking is much more sway to the Cardinals and media looking at their offense? Because I feel like that's an offensive heavy ranking, because they've lost. Most people on the outside believe Chandler Jones was their best defensive player. I happen to think it's Budda Baker, just a little bit more consistent. But you lose Chandler Jones, and you're still 5th in the NFC, hierarchy, 5th or 6th, depending on what you want to do. I feel like that's most teams just saying that Cardinals just are too talented offensively.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen what this defense can look like without Chandler Jones before, and they finished, fine as far as sack totals. They actually played very well, albeit with Hassan Reddick in the lineup. But I think Steve Keim believes he can find pass rush from elsewhere and not have to break the bank, $17.5 million that Chandler Jones got. So we'll see. I mean, can he kind of dial it back a little bit? Can he go find that Jonathan Abraham of the 2022 offseason? Can he find that Dwight Freeney of the 2022 offseason and kind of wring that washcloth out of whatever player it is, that little talent that might be left, and get to the quarterback like 5.5, 6? They don't need a guy to be double-digit sacks, guys. They just need somebody to be to join the rotation. If they give $12 million to Dennis Gardeck, he's not just going to be playing teams. He's going to be a guy coming off of a season he returned from knee surgery. They're going to put him back in the pass rush rotation. I'm not saying he's going to have like the success he had in 2020, but they expect him to get to the quarterback.
I agree. I look for. This is you guys convinced me. Just I was. Look, I told you I was off the boat. I was hanging on to the flag in the back end of the ship while we just on the rail. I'm just waving in. All the water splashing in my face. But Johnny, you guys brought me home. I can see us being in the top 5 if we get the pieces back. I agree with that. We need some help, and hopefully that there's a game plan ensue that we will be able to see come to pass. And while we're making it happen, I'm about to. Got me scared over it. I thought it was April Fool's Day.
Now, I appreciate you buying what we're selling.
I think it's thin ice, right? I mean, I feel like they're walking on thin ice the way that things are constructed. I mean, like they're a player away in every spot too, going down to where things become very tough to operate.
You know,
Kyler Murray plays 17 games next year. I think they make the playoffs.
Hey, Kiro said something, and I think this is apropos. You guys check it out. He said, "What about the schedule?"
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at our schedule, you know, this schedule is demolishing. If Kyler Murray, this is something he brings up to the table. If Kyler Murray gets this roster to the playoffs, man, we need to extend them easily. But when you look at our roster, you guys, you look at our schedule, it's not an easy one just to pass up on, considering what we have as a talent right now on our team.
A lot of good stuff, gentlemen. I want to remind everybody, be sure to like, subscribe, leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. Monday will mark the debut of former Arizona Cardinal running back Damien Anderson, who is joining PHNX Cardinals with our little family here that they're cultivating. We love the support. We love the energy from everybody out there. We appreciate the support. We put a bow on Mr. Bo Brock's first week, which is, I feel like you've been with us for weeks now, for months now. It's just become such a natural thing, Bo, to have you on the show.
It's been a blast. It's flown by, even though, yeah, you're right. It felt like we've been doing a month's worth of shows, but we're just comfortable together. Me, you, Speedo Jackson, we're a big, happy family, and we're excited to bring DA to the fold on Monday.
Everybody, make sure, have a great weekend. For Bo Brock, for Frank Sanders, I'm Johnny Venerable. Again, check us out, gophnx.com, PHNX Sports on YouTube. We'll see you after this weekend. Take care, everybody.